Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hey, doing well. Where is Matt?
That's a good question. He is my co-host. I don't know. Matt's usually here before I am, before you are for sure, but I
Right.
don't know. I haven't seen him anywhere.
Oh,
Excuse me, sir. Uh, are you? Excuse me. Who are you, and why are you in our stream? Where is Matt?
are we about to die?
Oh, he's got a knife. He's got a knife. Excuse me, sir. We don't know how you got the link to this chat. We don't. Hold on a sec. Matt, Matt, we can see your beard. Yes, yeah, Matt, we can see the beard sticking out of the mask.
Very clearly.
Fine. I just wanted to be a scary serial killer for once, and no, can't do that. Got to be, professional.
I was terrified.
Whatever, it's fine. Framewreck.
What a story, Mark.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Framewreck. As always, Matt Chapmond, the great man behind the cold opens. And of course, to my right here, you see a returning face. He's been on draft day a few times. He's been on this show once talking about scary movies. He's back again to talk about scary movies. Chris Baker Scott is here to chat about a movie that he told us about that we hadn't seen before, Shakma. Chris, how you doing?
Doing well. I'm so excited to talk about this movie. It's been a while since I've watched it. After my rewatch, it just reminded me how much I loved it.
Yeah. This is a show where we celebrate bad movies. The movies that are so bad they make us laugh and make us smile. And my co-host on the show, Matt Chapmond. Matt, how are you doing? Are you excited to talk about Shakma, a movie that neither of us have seen?
Yeah, I hadn't seen it, and I was so I didn't really know what to expect. I will say that the trailer, after I watched the trailer before watching it, it was one of my favorite trailers that I've ever seen in my life.
And Shakma, shocking audiences everywhere. Shakma!
Having seen the movie, I understand why the trailer is what it is, and that makes the trailer actually not as terrible as it was, because it didn't really have a lot to work with. But I'm very excited to talk about this movie.
Yeah, if you haven't seen the trailer, go watch it, and then go watch this movie, because it's something. Obviously, it's October, it's a spooky season, so we wanted to do something horror related. Chris, an expert of both horror films and bad movies, just like Matt is, so I'm very excited to get into Shakma. But Matt, I'll let you kind of take it away. Matt is alive. Spoiler alert, he's alive and he's here, even though his name says otherwise. But Matt, let's lead us into this mess of a glorious mess that this movie is.
Okay. So if you have not seen Shakma, it is about a baboon who oh god, we're gonna get into this, but who is given a drug to make it less, I don't know. Anyway,
to make it less aggressive.
Less aggressive.
But sometimes it has the opposite effect.
But they fixed that, apparently, except they didn't. It's and then he attacks a bunch of people. We're going to talk about that here. But first, as always, go over production notes. It will be unsurprising to you. This isn't a super famous movie. There aren't a lot of production notes on this. It was written by Robert Engel, and it was directed by Hugh Parks and Tom Logan. The budget was an estimated $1.5 million. That's in 1990 money.
Which is surprisingly a lot, considering what the quality of this movie
it's
actually
one set.
We will talk about where I think that money went here in a moment, because I think there's
that money went.
Who that money went to. The correct thing. So, and then as far as behind the scenes stories, the monkey playing Shakma is called Typhoon, and was handled by Jerry Thering of Action Animals. And although the title might be read to indicate that it is a Chakma baboon, Typhoon was actually a Hamadryas baboon, which is much smaller than a Chakma baboon, which is the largest version of baboon. And actress Amanda Weiss, who played the female lead, was terrified of Typhoon.
Well, reasonably so. I think
Yeah.
that's the first starting point we can talk about is just the fact
Yes.
that it's a live ape and the stuff the ape is doing, or the baboon. I know there's different animals, different distinctions, but
it's a monkey because it has a tail.
right. So the things that the monkey is doing is violent, and I mean, a movie just came out, Nope, which is an excellent movie, I think.
Right.
That really talked about this and the idea that like monkeys on set, maybe not the safest thing. I know they tend to get younger monkeys when they're doing stuff in Hollywood because they don't want them to be fully grown. They don't want them to have minds for their own. But I feel
Right.
like we've seen enough Planet of the Apes movies by now to know that like you shouldn't fuck around with real monkeys. I don't know. I mean, that might be a real lesson they could have taken. Again, it's the 90s. I don't know. But I think that's already a risk, a hazard, especially considering the budget is not big enough to be able to really like support having a live wild animal on set. I don't know.
Let's make that the first. Yeah, like you said, let's make that the first talking point here because Typhoon, the baboon on set,
That rhymes.
yeah, it was okay. So I started to feel bad for the actual monkey,
Same.
not necessarily Shakma, but the
Right.
actual monkey.
Typhoon.
Who was having to attack doors over and over and
Like
over,
fling himself against these doors,
fling
like,
himself at these
repeatedly.
doors. And I was like, how are they getting him to do this? I did find out how they get him to do that because I was like, are they just making him really angry and just hiding behind the door like he really wants to attack them? Because that's messed up. But what they did was, hold on, I have it here. So Typhoon has a alpha and beta trainer on set.
Okay. Explain.
And that is the extent of my knowledge on those things.
Okay, all right.
But the beta trainer was on the opposite side of doors, whispering Typhoon's name, which made him angry.
Okay.
Is how they achieved the most of the movie. 60% of this movie is Typhoon jumping at doors. So the majority of this movie was achieved by a person standing on the other side of the door, whispering Typhoon's name and him getting angry at that. Which seems horrifying to me. How do you guys feel about that?
It's pretty bad. Now, I am a fan, I will say, of movies where an animal is like the villain, quote unquote villain. Like I saw Beast with Idris Elba in theaters because I knew it would be bad. I was not disappointed. And just there's something about seeing this baboon just really, really angry and going after them that you kind of root for the baboon at times.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why. At least for me, I found myself just feeling bad for the baboon, but also rooting for him.
Because he's like a product of testing and stuff too. Which is
There's
like,
that too.
It's like
Which I
you're
have
not supposed
questions
to
on
like-
why they're
Right,
testing him.
Yeah, it's like
but
you're
yeah,
supposed to like you're supposed to like the humans because they're the ones who are like being attacked. They're the victims. Usually, you root for the victims, not the killer in a movie. But like at the same time, what they're doing to the monkeys, like that's why the monkeys are the way that they are. I mean,
right.
You know, it's the whole idea of Nope too. It's like you gotta like respect the wild. Like you can't you can't tame the beast. So it's like, what did you expect? It's very interesting because I mean, we can segue later, but like I don't find any of these characters particularly likable to the point where I'm like really rooting for them to survive, which I think also helps in making hurts the movie, but helps in making it more entertaining because you can kind of root for Shakma. You're kind of like, okay, go get him, go maul his face off, and it's like, you know, that's not how we should be reacting. You know, like the best movies that like Jaws and Crawl, the Sam Raimi produced alligator movie.
Crawl was really
those
good.
movies are pretty good, and you feel for the humans. You do find the villain to be the animal the whole time, and it doesn't try to give you that other perspective. Like it's fully about the humans, and you're invested in their stories. Whereas here, it's I think the total opposite. I know you're more invested in the monkey, which I think is funny, but also not good for quality's sake. You know,
this movie actually kind of in I don't want to say enriched. It reminded me of my my feelings on using animals in movies, because I know there's a lot of people out there, and I see it on the internet all the time. It's like, why did they use a CGI bear? Bears exist. or why did they use the CGI dog in this, or why did they use CGI this? We have those animals. Personally, I feel like if possible, all animals should be CGI in movies. I mean, like horses, I think that's good. That would be difficult and stuff like that. But for the most part, I'm actually on the side of, if you can, please make the animal CGI so that it doesn't have to perform for you. It always reminds me of, at the Tulsa Zoo, there is an elephant there who, when you go visit this elephant, will just be doing its circus routine.
Oh.
As though it thinks that it still has to do that because that was its life for so long. Like it does this little dance where it puts foot over the other foot and just kind of like steps up on a thing, and it just does that for what you stand there and watch it, and it makes me so sad. I do not like going to visit that elephant because that makes me so sad, and that's why I don't fuck with circuses. But yeah, it makes me sad, and that's what this type of thing reminds me of, is treating and like teaching an animal to perform and it believing that that's its only purpose in life. Yeah, that bugs me.
Right. Well, because animals aren't actors. Like that is kind of a thing that whenever I see an animal, quote unquote, acting in a movie, I'm like, yeah, they're trained to do these things, but they're not knowing that they're playing a character, or like they're just going with their training, which you can definitely see that in this movie specifically.
Right.
And it's just, I agree with you on that one, Matt, for sure.
Yeah.
Like,
There's a great part where it first gets when it first attacks everyone, and then they have to give it the sedative, and it's not a monkey who is knocked out. It's a monkey who has been trained to bend over in half and put its head on the floor, because it's still standing there. It's still standing there, like just like with its head on the floor.
Also, that first attack,
sad,
it's like 7 minutes in.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah, it's quick. There's so much, and I want to let's start with the game, or let's go to the game. The game that they are playing.
This previously tabletop, but now they're taking it into a LARPing situation in this building role-playing game.
What is this game? This would have been so much better if I had understood exactly what the game they were playing was.
And the thing is, the game is confusing, but the thing is, the amount of time spent doing the game,
so much time.
You would think that the hour of the game would help explain what the game was, but because we don't know what the game is and we never find out, it's just an hour of aimlessness of like, you have to be in on it. It's not like New Girl, the show New Girl, where they play True American and it's like, what are the rules of the game? It doesn't matter because it's like a fun little 1 minute sequence every few seasons and it's like a fun little gag. No, like we're spending an hour, almost an hour, maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe it is an hour, fully invested, not invested,
like 50 minutes.
Watching this game while not knowing what's going on, but they never care to explain to us what it is really. Yeah. I mean, there's an idea of like trying, like almost like a hide and seek kind of element to it.
Yeah, here's what I glean. It's like a hide and seek, but you also at some point the mission is to rescue the princess on the top floor. But to get there, you have to go to different rooms and solve riddles.
But you don't have to tell them the answer. No one tells them the answer except
no one answers any riddle. Yeah,
one time. Somebody says an answer, but that's after the doctor's already dead. So like it's no one ever answers. And Bradley wants to fuck this game.
Sweet Bradley.
He wants to have carnal relations with this game. He was one of the most entertaining things in this movie to me because of how much he was just juicing for this game.
Very serious about this game. He programmed like the map. Also, okay, I know the last time I came onto the show, we were talking about a queer movie, but Bradley is 1,000% also queer coded. Like he's a gay character, but also he's obsessed with this game. I don't even think he goes to med school with the other like players. I think he's a programmer or something.
Yeah, I don't.
It seemed like he was
unclear.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this game. We can't figure out the rules is. Yeah, which everyone loves, including Richard, who just has to get in on it in the middle of a surgery. is
Well, see, and that's the thing. Originally, I thought Richard wanted to play the game to get extra credits. But no, it's not about credit. He just wants to have more face time with the professor.
But does he want to play the game? Because he convinces them to let him play the game, cancels a date with his girlfriend, and spends the rest of his life complaining that he has to be involved in this game.
Well, it seemed like he wanted to just like get on the professor's good side by playing the game.
I guess that's part of it, but also the professor didn't seem into him being in the game. So like, and then he like complained to the professor. I don't see what his benefit of like what he was benefiting from this. It doesn't.
Also, it seemed like he wanted the game to be over quickly so that he could go spend more time with his girlfriend. But there's a scene where Bradley goes into where he is playing as like the villain and he hides from him. I would think if you want the game to end quickly, you like take Bradley out of the game.
And with no explanation as to why he does it. He says he tells the doctor that he was sleeping and he fell asleep, which I don't know why that's better than I was joking around and hiding. But
like if you spend some time thinking about this game, it will break your brain.
And all right, I'm going to add another layer just to break everyone's brain fully.
No.
Is this used to be a tabletop? How?
Yeah.
How? What did they do? Because I'm a D&D player. I think Chris, you play D&D.
Yeah.
What are they doing? Like, what? How is this a tabletop game?
I did not even think about that. But you're 1,000% correct. Like, it's again the core of the game is solving riddles or not, going from room to room and gathering keys somehow. But they weren't gathering keys. How are they getting into the locked rooms? Like.
And I love how so much of this game goes on before we even revisit the monkey. Like, I feel like it's just absent. Like, it was enough time had passed where I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. There's a killer monkey on the loose, and we're just not seeing it yet. Until
and they put a $500 bet on who wins the game, which is this a game that you can, like, a single player win? It seemed like it should be more of a cooperative thing.
It should be.
And who's paying that bet? You know what I mean?
Right. And they just have a spare $500 and, like.
Right. Yeah, it's. Okay, I'm going to revisit the game later in our superlatives because I have a lot to talk about later about it. I will mention that Sam said he was having problem on one of the he's like, I'm having such a problem on this level, and also like, oh, here's another layer. She stole his notebook. It was like copied back. So like I stole his notebook. Like that was part of the game also. But that was not really ever established or what or why that worked. It's like he doesn't have anything written down. I don't understand how you do poorly at that game. Also, like if the game is just walking into rooms and saying I've been in this room, because at one point Bradley I think did have to type Frodo into a computer, but that's the only time. That's the only time a computer was involved in the game other than the monitoring and or that they had to actually do anything with the word. So yeah, it's also, I don't understand the purpose of the nemesis, which I'll also bring up later. Because when Bradley first walks into the room that the nemesis is in, the doctor guy is like, oh, that sucks. Sorry, Bradley. But then once Bradley thinks he hears the nemesis when it's time for it, when he goes and dies, he's like, I hear the nemesis. I'm going to where it is. Is he supposed to go where it is or not go where he's supposed to go?
At that point, he had gotten that pouch of glitter, which I think was
like maybe that was. Oh, okay.
So, again, deconstructing this game, if you spend a little bit of time on it, it will ruin you.
I was gonna say it could be like its own college thesis. Like someone could literally just walk in like a film course and be like, "This is my final like paper, like big thesis about like this game."
Okay.
Like, and you could probably fill a whole 20 pages on it.
All right,
at least.
Everyone who's watching, this is trademarked. We need to make a documentary about us trying to recreate that game.
Yes. We're not going to even answer all the questions. We're just going to be trying.
We're going to be trying to figure out what the game is and how the game works.
It's not going to be us recreating the game. It's just going to be us trying to do so because we're never going to get there.
Yeah. All right.
God.
So the game is weird, and this game is headed up by I've forgotten the character's name, but by Roddy McDowall, which is 100%
Professor Sorensen.
Sorensen. Yes, thank you, Professor Sorensen, which is 100% where the majority of the money for this movie went.
Yep.
1000%.
And I swear, the second they were like, the second they got him on, they were like, "We got it. This is it. This is it." An ape, the star, the titular ape in Planet of the Apes, is going to be in our monkey movie.
Yeah.
We're gonna make this, and we're just gonna let the cash roll in on us, because that is the key.
Honestly, it should have worked.
You've seen the trailer. They mentioned him once. The trailer should have been about how this is a new monkey movie starring Roddy McDowall, but it wasn't. He was in the trailer one time when they said his name, and that was it.
I feel like that's how it would have been sold today. Like, no shame at all.
What was the last Planet of the Apes movie he was in before this? Was it Battle in '73?
He was in all 5 of the original. Yes, the Battle of the Planet of the Apes was the last one.
Yeah, so I think that's another thing too. Is it's been 20 years removed, and like thinking now about like 20 years ago, like 2002, that would be like if one of the Lord of the Rings actors had never done anything since, or like was barely in much since, and they were like, they're going to be in the Rings of Power. Like, it would be such a selling point, I think. You know what I mean? Like, just the fact you're getting
2002. 2002 is when Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man, came out, and last year.
See, there you go. And that's what I'm talking about. Like 20 years is enough time to where like people are longing to see people like legacy characters without feeling
nostalgia.
too far removed. Like 20 years, I think that could have been an easy selling point. Because at first I was thinking, well, maybe it was like 30, 40 years, maybe people had forgotten about. But like Roddy McDowall is still like a name. Like, and that's why what you said, Matt, like the money must have gone toward him, because like I don't see how they could have put the money anywhere else.
The only other person,
the actual cost of the animal, maybe I don't know how much that cost, or I don't even know how much of that was legal. And then you have Amanda Weiss, who is in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Nightmare on Elm Street. So like she's a name to a certain niche crowd.
She is also the guy who plays Sam was in The Blue Lagoon, back with Brooke Shields. Part of several generations of sexual awakenings happened.
Gotcha. I was going to say I've never heard of that movie, but I'm also
if you were a little bit younger, if you were of an age where you would have had a VHS player, you would have watched this in secret by yourself.
Well, because here's the thing, with him as the lead, like I had no frame of reference for him. Like, but with Roddy McDowall, I recognized him mostly from Fright Night. And this other terrible movie called Class of 1984, which is great. Honestly, it would be a great movie to cover on here. But like, and even Amanda Weiss, like I knew of her playing Tina in Nightmare on Elm Street. But that lead who played Sam, I was like, I don't know you.
and I think there's a reason we don't know him since. I think there's a reason a lot of these actors, even Roddy McDowall, were not really successful after this.
I did recognize him, and I don't. I might be a little bit more forgiving of him than you guys are here, because I thought he was fine. I did recognize him but I didn't know from where until later. I was like, oh, it's the boy from Blue Lagoon. It's the one who was feeling up Brooke Shields throughout that movie. That's what it was.
Just all ties back to Brooke Shields.
It does. Yeah. They definitely thought they had something with Roddy McDowall there, and they definitely should have. I'm
going to add a disclaimer because I didn't realize this. When I said they haven't really worked much since, it's because Roddy McDowall did pass away a year or two after this.
That's true.
So that also aids into it, but the other actors, my point stands.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, he was like 70.
He dies 8 years after this. So again, even then, like 8 years.
Yeah, 8 years is a substantial time, I do have a question about these characters, though. Mm-hmm. They're med students? Why are they doing experiments on animals?
See, that I also had that question, because the only one who really mentions that he wants to be a doctor is Sam.
Right.
I don't. Maybe that's just because it's a hands-on situation. Like I don't know, because this wouldn't be his residency, because that would be.
But then he was also
not,
like, "Oh, I trained Shakma. Like, you know, I was
Yeah.
So he's also training animals, but also he's very much like, I want to be a doctor.
Maybe he's in med school, and this is his side gig, and
Maybe.
it just happens to be serendipitous that it's. But of course, they are actually helping perform the surgeries and stuff, so I would assume some level of training would be involved. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. And also one other thing is like I don't know. I'm not a med student. I've never worked in that field, obviously, but like, what are the restrictions in playing full-fledged LARPing games in a place in a facility where you were supposed to be working and testing on animals and like?
Listen, Dylan.
There's some dangerous equipment.
Listen, guys.
Exactly my point. I know.
Listen here. He had it locked up, and he trusts his own his own students.
He
said that because Richard, the idiot of this movie, was like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And Sorensen's like, "Don't be an idiot, Richard. It's fine." But yes, you're right. You're absolutely
Professor
right.
Sorensen 1,000% has tenure. Like, he's not going anywhere. Like, he just do whatever he wants.
Well, he's not going anywhere.
Well, that's true. He's not going anywhere.
He did. Okay, so yeah, Sam wants to be a doctor, and he's going to be a terrible doctor, and here's why. And okay, my wife's a nurse, and I told her that he did this, and she goes, "Yeah, but that's why doctors don't give meds." And I was like, "What?" And she goes, "I wouldn't trust most doctors." I was like, because I said I would not trust him as a doctor. I told her, she goes, "I don't trust most doctors," but she's a nurse, so she has hands-on experience with doctors. But anyway, so Sam is supposed to give this ape enough whatever to put it down, and does not look at what he is grabbing. He blind grabs behind him.
Yeah,
as he's talking to someone, just blind grabs behind him, and then gives the ape whatever it is. I'm like, oh my god, if I knew that my doctor did that, would immediately change. Like, even if I knew he did that in med school, like, I'm like, no, too bad. I'm not going to go to a doctor who blind grabs something it's going to put into another human. Like,
yeah, and I guess the intention was to kill Shakma, so it's like, okay, if he grabs the wrong thing, whatever. Like, I don't. But what if you weren't? What if your goal was to just kind of like, tame him, or just like, what if it was a person? Yeah, like, what if it was a person who was like, oh, give him this medication, then he was like, okay, like, that's where it gets problematic. Because like, if your goal is to kill, then if you give too much of the wrong thing, it'll probably do the job anyway. Right. Which is sad, to think about. Killing animals is just wrong in general. But yeah, just very very interesting.
What was everyone's partners just like going into this facility? Like, Sam's girlfriend Tracy, she's there. Like, Richard's girlfriend just wanders in. Yeah. Like, what is this place where people can just wander in?
That's an excellent question. Yeah, it's also Richard, sweet Richard, just assumes that he needs to go cremate this animal, which is really funny to me. And Sorensen's like, "Why? Who told you to do that?" And he lies. He's like, "You told me to." I was like, "Yeah, Richard, sweet idiot."
Lie
Richard.
To tell is like answering back with the person who's asking you the lie. That's so funny.
My question is here with killing Shakma is why? They literally just finished the surgery. It had one reaction. It's probably still under anesthesia.
Right.
How can you trust that what's happening has anything to do with what you just did, except that it is a groggy animal, and a human would probably do that coming out of anesthesia? Like, the abruptness with which he's just like, "Oh no, that monkey looked at me weird. We're just gonna have to put it down."
Well, I love that Shakma like gets up, like he's under this tarp, this sheet, and like he just gets up, attacks completely, just goes crazy, and someone hits an alarm and it goes crazy.
So it's like, is that not bothering you? And they're like, yeah.
And then he goes and flips it off. Like, he's trying to like back all this girl. That's the black guy, Gary. He's just there. Like, the alarm is going off. and he's just trying to like talk to this girl, and she's like, "Wait a second, is that alarm not bothering you?" He goes, "Oh right." Goes, turns it off, returns to her like nothing.
Yeah. The last thing I have to talk about with the cast here, or the characters really, is Sam and oh god, I wish I would have written down her name. Kim. It's Sam and Kim.
Mhm.
Oh,
Kim,
the little sister.
The little sister.
Okay, I have so many notes.
Okay, so seconds after assuming that Kim is underage, Sam and she just says, how old do you think I am? Like,
Yeah,
in an
'cause
obviously
like,
childlike manner. He's instantly DTF. Like, as soon as she walks away, he's like,
yeah, okay, it's either that or he's just oblivious to what she is looking for, because like he even says like, "Oh, thank you for playing our princess in this game. Did you ask your parents?" And she's like, "Parents? How old do you think I am?" And then like also the music undercutting it is a little weird.
Yeah.
And yeah, he does kind of look like he's into it, but I was hoping that he's just like, "Oh, she just has a crush or something."
okay, so
Because he has a girlfriend, clearly.
He does have a girlfriend, but the way he watches her leave, like either the goal of that was to him to be like, "Huh, what a good kid," which I didn't get from it, but it seemed like, "Huh, what do you know? Maybe she's not the 13-year-old she looks like she is." Also, the fact that his girlfriend dies before Kim does in this movie, and the emotional payoff is him grabbing her and kind of lends to my thing about how that's really weird that he was DTF here. Like,
okay, that going to those death scenes, very bizarre, because like his girlfriend Tracy, she dies, and he comes across her dead body, and like the next shot, he's walking through the hallway, like holding her dead body, and like sets her down in a safe spot to where Shakma can't get to her. And then later, Kim dies, and same thing. Like
they repeat the beat, yes.
Yeah, like holding her dead body, like walking her out, and it's just like, what?
Okay, so I will say there are two shots in this movie that I think are legitimately affecting and actually really, really good. One of them is the shot of Shakma's bloody teeth dripping from like,
oh yeah,
where the girlfriend is standing in the background, and you like look through, like it's like, wow, that's what you were capable of with this movie. Like more of that, like that kind of image.
Seems like it shouldn't belong. Like
that was like straight out of like American Werewolf in London. Like that was an actually legitimately good shot that was not present anywhere else in the movie. The other affecting shot is where he goes into that room and you're not sure what's going to happen, and then he walks out with Kim in his arms. Like, I'm like, that's actually a really good shot. It's unfortunate that it is a repeated beat of seconds ago, because if it wasn't, that would be an incredible shot. Like that would have been really great if he hadn't just done it seconds before. So
I have another moment I like as well. It's the moment where I forget who dies by the elevator. I think is it Gary? I don't know. One of them dies in the elevator, and like the other two of the next floor are trying to call the elevator, and the elevator's just like dung.
Oh yeah, it was
dung,
Professor Sorensen.
It's Aaron Sorensen.
That's
Yes,
it. Sorensen's there. But I kind of like that. I'm like, that's like a fun horror beat because it kind of adds to the camp of like the elevator door hitting. Because like we've probably seen it in other films and utilized better. But I like that idea of like, why isn't the elevator coming? You just the shot it kind of pans up and it's like dung. The doors just keeps hitting the bodies, and the bodies are just flailing every time the door hits it because it can't close. Like, I like that. I like that moment.
That's actually an excellent point, which is the potential that it had. It's like those shots where they're actually pretty affecting, and you're like, where was that? And the comedy in this movie is so bad, and they attempt it. They try so hard to have good comedy, or to have comedy in this, and it just never lands, except for things like that, and where and I don't think this was intended to be comedy. Maybe it was, but they did not play it as that. But it was really good comedy where he uses Sorensen's foot as a doorstop. Oh, yeah. That one part, I was like, that's really good. I wish they had intended for that to be funny, because
there was a lot of unintentional.
Humor. There was a lot of unintentional, but it was none of it was the actual comedy that they were trying to do.
Because one that sticks out in my head of like a scene that I remember when the first time I watched this movie, got great laughs for me, and on my rewatch, still same. So they come up with a plan, Sam and Tracy, to combat this baboon, or at least blind it for a second. Tracy is like, "Oh, a flashing strobe light or bulb. Like if we flash them in the eyes, it'll like blind them for a second. We can like get by them." So they have this flash, or like this for like seemingly like a camera or something, and like they walk out. Shakma runs up. They flash at him. He literally just blinks and like runs at them. Like doesn't affect him for a second. And they did it again. Like they try it a second time. Same result. Shakma just keeps running at them, and then they just throw the flash away.
Yes, that made me laugh too. And okay, I actually rewatched it today while I was working, just so I could make sure that I had all my notes. And when I saw that the second time, I was like, it made me laugh again, but also it made me go, like, that scene either needed to be way longer, where they took a lot of prep and then it didn't work and then it was funny, or way shorter, where they tried it once and then abandoned it. Because those two things would have made that scene really work. But what they did did not work at all. Very short amount of prep time, then a very long trying to execute it, and then it not working, and it just did not work. But I think that in it is part of the problem with this whole movie, which is that it's 140 minutes, and there could have been, with some of the tweaks that I talked about, a good 80-minute movie in this. But not with what we have. There's not a good 80-minute movie in this movie. However, there's a better 80-minute movie in this movie that's probably not as entertaining because it's not as bad. But there is a quality-wise better 80-minute movie than an hour and 40-minute movie that we got.
Well, I'll also say I feel like there's some talent behind the scenes, like especially with makeup work and effects. Like Richard's death with the hydrochloric acid, I guess it was, thrown on his face. You see his dead body, and like his face is like kind of melty and horrible looking. That's good effects.
That is good effects. And so the effects work was great. The problem is that was not made clear in the text of the thing, because again, I've watched it twice in the last 2 days. I didn't realize that until you just said it, that's why his face was all...
Yeah, because when he goes into the closet, he sees the jar, like, for some reason pours into a glass. Don't know why. Goes out. Shakma is just like, "Oh no, you don't!" Jumps on him, and I guess we're to assume that he splashed it in his face.
But wouldn't it have been great if you had seen it splash?
If you had seen it,
then you know that's what's happening. You don't see it. I just assumed, because I thought this was another flashy thing situation where we took a little bit of prep time for this to happen, and then it doesn't work.
Well, in a way, it didn't work for him. So.
Yeah, it worked for Shakma just fine.
I have an idea. I would like to pitch that we have Sam Raimi remake this, because he clearly he produced Crawl, which is kind of like that killer animal thing, and he also works well with the camp horror type thing. He can work in a lower budget aesthetic. I would like to see that. And yeah, I would like to see Sam Raimi remake this, or any director really with competence, because I think this does have, like you said, Matt, potential. Like I think there's something in there, especially just with the whole killer monkey thing. Like any killer animal thing should work, even if it's not good. Like Beast was, it at least had a good production value and production quality. I actually haven't seen Beast, so some people actually have liked it that I've talked to, but like I really do think like there's potential to have movies like this that can just be fun, stupid fun, without being just like bad, you know what I mean? And part of the joy is the fact that it is so bad, but I think there's some potential there with they could actually make a story. And I would have Sam Raimi do it, because I still think he can give it that B movie aesthetic. Like the foot in the door, like as the door stops, like that's like a funny. That reminds me of Sam Raimi. That's very Evil Dead. So
here's what I want. I want to do a Grindhouse style, except the opposite situation here, where instead of having two different movies playing together as though you're watching a Grindhouse cinema, I want to have the same movie made by 3 different directors, back to back to back, maybe shorter versions, maybe an hour long for each of them, but get Sam Raimi, James Gunn, even though he's probably real busy right now, and then like someone like Wes Anderson. I want to see their three versions of this movie.
Shakma.
And Wes Anderson's would be animated in the style of Fantastic Mr. Fox or Isle of Dogs. That way you don't have to see any animal cruelty, but there doesn't have to be CGI. Like I like this idea, Matt. I like the idea. And maybe then you also like show Shakma as well as a comparison. But I do request in one of those versions that Andy Serkis plays Shakma, just because I feel like it needs to be a thing at some point, a CGI or like a.
I actually think that
Andy Serkis.
Okay, I do want one in one of them. Andy Serkis should play Shakma. In another one, Andy Serkis should play Sorensen because he is the other because he has.
There you go.
Yeah, because of the apes situation. Yeah,
I love it.
Plays the apes.
All right, we're pitching it. The Shakma trio.
Or you can play both in all of them, like because mocap and play the live action. So I love this.
I do have another question.
Yes.
Just in regards to the character Kim, the little sister. I'm obsessed with her. She's playing the role of the princess, and she's again still flirting with Sam. And she's like, "Oh, I have a surprise for you." And like her surprise is this horrible Ren Fair-esque dress that she's wearing, it's weird. It's so weird. She's a weird character.
It was a weird genie, like I'm a genie or like some I don't know. Yeah, it was
because then he makes it upstairs after seeing so much death and knowing that Shakma is just on the loose, and she's there dressed up, and he's just yelling for her to make sure she's safe, I guess. And he's just angry because it takes her a while to come out. And he's like, "I was calling for you." And she's like, "Oh, well, don't you like my dress?" Or something like. It's it's so weird.
When he's calling for her and he's yelling and she won't come, and then he goes and grabs the
cup, and
then he walks all the way around to throw it at the axe, the emergency axe,
which has a tiny hammer next to it.
Yeah. I'm like, why did he? Because she's like, why did you do that? And he was like, because you couldn't hear me. And I'm like, why did you do that? You could have just smashed the glass. She would have come, or smashed the thing. I don't know why you felt like that glass, like that mug in that glass was going to be the right combination. That's
right. So many questions.
So speaking of the attacks, because we were talking about the attacks there, I do have a little bit of information here. There were no female baboons on set. Oh, I already mentioned the rest of that the Typhoon had a male in beta. There were no females. Mm-hmm. They did not use, that was not part of what they did. Okay, so my next question is, why don't any of the doors in this building latch? Because they had to they had to hold every door shut. And I know they said he can open them, but he wasn't. He was just ramming himself into them, and they were still having to push it shut. I don't know why these doors didn't latch, or why they couldn't I don't understand. Weird.
Well, I also don't understand. Maybe it's because I'm just super confused. But when they're in the stairway, why couldn't they just stay there? Or
they could.
When they made it up to the top floor, where seemingly Shakma could not get there, why not just stay there until the morning?
Well, and that's yes. And
I know it would be somebody else's problem who's ever coming in to open up the school or whatever.
I think for that there is the explanation of that he needs to find the rest of the people, because Gary is Gary's
the last one who's
out there on a different level somewhere, doesn't know anything about it.
Gary just cracks me up. We'll talk about him later.
And I like how we just forget about Kim until the end. No one's concerned about Kim at all throughout, which makes sense. I imagine if a monkey was attacking all of me and everyone around me, and everyone else was dying, I might forget. I might have forgotten the head count of the place, but he jumps at the doors, and sometimes only the bottom of the door comes up, and I'm like, what's happening with those doors? They're rubber and they don't latch. And it's like they want to be attacked by monkeys in this building. Except for the lock doors. Those are fine. Those are secure.
You'd think they'd take like
those.
a few. You think they'd take like a couple tens of dollars out of Roddy McDowell's paycheck and give the doors locks, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Or I have to imagine that those doors unlock with keys, but I have to imagine that once you're inside one of those rooms, it locks with just a
lock, just like a
lock,
trip.
like you just lock it. I maybe not, but that seems like the logical thing is that you don't need a key to lock the inside of a room. But who knows? Who knows? That seems like a liability thing to not be able to get out of a room.
Yeah.
I just want to know who signed off on allowing them again to just play this game after hours.
Sorensen.
God.
Okay.
You know what? Honestly, if we do this, that just inspired a great idea. Like, make Sorensen the villain, and he's like in on it, and he's been setting up this game as a way to like pick these kids off. Like, maybe make that the angle of it, so it's like that's why the game's happening. Because if not, it's just like it's again the question of like why are they all playing this game after dark? Like, give it some perspective of like this guy is trying to like lull all these kids together to kill them off with his killer monkey or something, and then he gets killed too. Like, there's also, a lot of potential here. A lot of potential.
Do they regularly play this tabletop version with their professor?
Or it sounds like it. It sounds like yeah. I mean, but it's Bradley's game. They specifically mentioned this is Bradley's game. This is Bradley's baby. So maybe Bradley is normally the GM, and they let him. He gets to play this time because Sorensen. I don't know exactly. Apparently, also, all you have. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, one other thing. When Richard dies, or no, when Bradley dies, his little tracker thing disappears off of the. Yeah, off the screen. Did Shakma destroy it?
Shakma broke his tracker and his walkie-talkie because that's what Sorensen says to Richard. He's like, while you're moving rooms, go tell Bradley that his tracker and his walkie-talkie are off. Like,
I felt like Shakma was he just like, he won't be needing this anymore, and just like broke both items. Like,
but like instantly, like as soon as he attacks him, like it goes away.
It goes away. Yeah.
And it's funny for a movie that doesn't seem to feel the need to explain so much. Felt like they needed to explain why the little blip goes off of the screen. That's clearly just done for effect. Like it clearly just blips off the screen because like that's the cinematic thing. But then they felt like they needed to explain that they needed to be like tell him it's off. Like yeah. Okay, so as we mentioned a few things that are actually good, like some behind the scenes stuff that's actually pretty good. A behind the scenes thing that is not actually pretty good is the Foley work, which if anybody out there doesn't know what Foley work is, it's when they create the sounds that the sounds are happening on the screen, not the music or anything, but like the things people are doing, footsteps, that kind of thing. Okay. First thing I want to mention is that we don't actually need to hear the metallic click every time they talk on the walkie-talkies. It was so annoying because it would always like double click. And I kept thinking if there was no click, I would not even notice. I would not care or notice that I could not hear a click when they were pressing that button. The fact that I can hear the click makes me notice it every single time. And I hated that so much because every time it was this little metallic click that was clearly not what a walkie-talkie does. But that's, yeah. And then another thing, and Chris mentioned it, the footsteps. So obviously an attempt to make it sound echoey when they were walking down the empty hall, they actually made it sound like a bunch of people were walking down this empty hall because
it felt very
it wasn't just echo. It was like clunk, 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 clunk. Going back to the attacks, I did need to mention two screams that I wanted to talk about. First of all, Apparently, all you have to do to get Shakma to run away from you is yell at him really loud, which would have been really good information earlier in the movie when everyone was dying, because at the end, Sam just yells at him really loud, and then Shakma runs away.
Yeah, he just like hops away.
He just hops away. Let me tell you, every time Shakma ran into a room on his hind legs, I just wanted
right?
I just wanted to be his friend. Like, it was like,
no. Like that scene that you're talking about when Sam yells at him and like he just turns and like skitters away. That made me root for him. I was like, oh,
like poor guy. Like, come on, hug him. What are you doing?
Right.
The other thing that I wanted to mention, and this is the thing that distracted me because I have it filed under the Foley and stuff, but it's not Foley. When Sam sends Tracy to create a distraction, which is just crazy. I don't know why he feels the need to create a distraction why he needs to send a living human to go create a distraction. He's certainly responsible for her death. Sends her to create a distraction. She screams to distract Shakma. And then he gives a little knowing smile, like, there it is.
He does.
That could have been her dying. Like, I don't know why. It's like having a safe word that's no, stop, that hurts. Like, it's like you don't have the thing that indicate the indicator be something that could mean a very bad thing is happening. Like, but yeah, apparently the indicator that she's distracting him is a hearty, blood curdling scream.
It's just a scream.
But you know, if she happens to be dying, that also means Shakma is distracted. So
that's true. So it works.
Yeah, it's fine.
Also, gotta say, when I first watched this movie, very surprised that Tracy died.
I was surprised too, and how early.
Surprising.
Yeah, I because, and I mentioned this earlier, that the big emotional ending part seemed like it was Kim dying because he had very little time with Tracy dying. And Tracy's death, him coming under the stall was pretty cool, creature moment. Of course, I don't know why she thought that was a good place to hide.
Well, also, I guess she was trying to go to
monkeys
the vent
can't
as well.
go. That vent was so small, and I gotta feel like there was better options.
And then she's still reaching for it mid-death because Shakma attacks her. You don't see anything because the stall is there, and it's shot outside the stall, and nothing happens. And then she reaches up and tries to still get to the vents, and then he just pulls her back down.
It made me wonder if that was a comedic beat or not, or if I was just because it was funny, but were they trying to be funny?
But someone's dying.
Someone's dying. They needed to go full horror comedy with this movie, and it would have been much better because that was a funny thing. I would expect to see that in a horror comedy, her reaching up for the vent as she's dying.
Well, that was a funny death, but you're right. They should have really, headed more towards the horror comedy angle because again, Richard's death also kind of funny because of the whole acid thing. There being a glass there as well. Again, just him pouring it into the glass and it's smoking.
All right. Well, do you guys have any other things before we get into our superlatives to talk about?
No, just the fact that they filmed this at the Universal Studios lot in Florida, the fact that just the fact that they were able to get that far is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Filming took place at Universal Studios Florida. Yeah, I don't know necessarily if it was Universal's bill or if it was just they paid to use the space. I don't really know, but when I read that, I was like, this should be a lot better for that. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Okay, well, let's get into our superlatives here. Let's start with worst line of dialogue. The problem with this movie is that there's not a lot of dialogue.
Yeah,
it's all bad, but it's whatever. I will say that my favorite, the one that made the line of dialogue that made me laugh the most was Gary, who has just been away. Oh, I think you wanted to say things about Gary. We should probably talk about Gary.
No, continue because it just kind of segues us to another superlative. But Gary's just, oh my God, Gary,
who's just been off on his own, oblivious to what's going on this whole time. The
We're
part
trying
where
to win
he's
that
like,
$500.
yeah, part where he says, "Nobody's getting my clues." That's got to be my favorite line, worst line of dialogue, favorite line of dialogue. It's just it made me laugh when he said it because he was saying it. It was clearly meant to be not as. It was clearly meant to be a different kind of funny than it was.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I think, yeah, I don't want to jump to another category, but spoiler alert, he's my worst actor. Only because, like, he just has the most random lines, too. Like, he's not part of that core group of people, like, core group of friends. Like, he's not our protagonist, but he's also not a side character. Like, he's present enough, but he just kind of comes and goes and just will spurt out random bits of dialogue that are all kind of on that same level of ridiculousness. And just his physical humor, too. It's not, like, intentional, I don't think. It's just the way he kind of, like, runs everywhere. It's very intense, and that's just what I love about it. It's like so bad it's good. I mean, that's the epitome of the show. But my worst line of dialogue though is Tracy's "You are so male." It's just so funny. Like
that's the other one I have written down here. Yeah, that's
another one that just jumped out at me.
I will go with my worst dialogue, mostly because of a weird accent work that's done. And I feel like I keep talking about Richard, but he's playing a game and he's reached out to by Professor Sorensen through the walkie-talkie, and they call him the Game Master. But he says it in this way. When Richard answers him, he goes, "Yes," I can't even do the accent. "Yes, Game Master." Like it's a weird Southern kind of thing. Draw. Yes. I can't put my finger on it, but like.
He has an inexplicable accent to me. I don't really know what to say about it, but you're right. I know exactly what you're talking about. Where it's just "Yes, Game Master."
Yeah, you did it perfectly. Yeah, like I just.
Yeah, his
it almost sounds like Southern, but also like a computer. Like you are logging on now. Like "Yes, Game Master." Like
because like when he's speaking regularly, it's fine. But like when he mentioned, like when he just said "Game Master," it was weird. Like.
That perfectly segues me into my worst actor, which is Greg Flowers, who played Richard.
Fair enough.
He did bring me a lot of entertainment, but it's just things like that where his stuff did feel robotic, which brought me entertainment again. It's very funny the way he said things, but it wasn't good. He didn't say them good. So that's really this is his only acting credit, and that seems fine.
That's a shame. Fair enough. That's a shame for a guy with the name Greg Flowers. Like that seems like it could be like a famous name, like Greg Flowers. I don't know. Hey, getting worst actor on this show is an honor. You know, like you should be honored because it means you're one of the highlights. Chris, who is your worst actor in this film?
Okay, it's gonna sound so weird because he was billed so high, like he's the actor, but Roddy McDowell for some reason, because I felt like he played it very posh, like, which is very much, I guess he's a professor, so that kind of fits, but it felt like he was above playing this game with them. So why would he be playing this with them?
Right. He was actually, I couldn't decide if I wanted to be my worst actor or best actor, and so he's neither. But because it's the same thing, like he's a great actor, and I think what he was doing was fine for something he was phoning in. But like, he did a lot of eyebrow acting. Like
he did.
There's this opening scene where they're doing surgery on Shakma, and he's got his mask on, and he's just like
exactly. God.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good, Matt.
A lot of that.
That's a good eyebrow acting.
It's I think that's a fine choice because I think he was like fine. I think he was doing what he was doing for this paycheck, and they should have utilized him better. But yeah, he also was not just. There was not a lot of good happening in this movie at all, even from Roddy McDowell.
But there is some good because we do have to name our actor that elevated the material, Matt. Mm-hmm. So who is yours, Matt? Who elevated this material for you?
You guys actually talked about him already, which is Christopher Atkins, the guy who plays the lead, the guy who plays Sam.
Okay.
I thought he had a lot of weight to all of the weight of this movie was basically on him. All that wasn't to Shakma, to Typhoon. Typhoon had all of the weight of this movie, but he had to run back and forth down that hallway a bunch, and he had to start out as kind of an every guy, and by the end, a shell shocked veteran. Like he went the full deer hunter in this movie in only an hour and 40 minutes.
Well, also, question: do we believe it's implied that he dies at the end?
I
took that as a death.
I took that as if he didn't die, that sucks that everyone else died. Everyone else died, and kind of feels like he should have. And
you need a final girl.
Yeah,
that's fair enough. Yeah,
girl here.
That's true.
But it makes it all the more surprising that Tracy does live, because you need a final girl. I mean, a good one.
He should have that part where he's on with 911. He finally has a phone, and they're just like, "Sir, hello, anybody? What's wrong?" And he's like, "It's my fault. It's my fault." That I just think that he did the best with what he had, and actually tried to infuse some emotion into this movie, even if it was not as successful as one might have hoped. Christopher Atkins is and plus he was in Blue Lagoon, and that's where I remember
you were in this Blue Lagoon.
It's probably not very good, but it was before we really had standards on things like Brooke Shields' boobs. So as a teenager, so that's really what it is. Yeah. And I was a teenager when I watched it. I have not watched it as an adult, so don't think I'm weird.
No, it's okay. We think you're weird for other reasons, Matt. Chris, what is your actor who elevated this material?
I gotta say Amanda Weiss. And that just might be because I loved her as Tina in Nightmare on Elm Street. It's one of my top movies. And I always wanted to see her more in that movie. Like, she dies, first, and I want to see, her give more. But you got to see her in a long run here, and she didn't really disappoint me. Like, the material's not great, but she's working with what she has. She looks terrified. She looks like she's in peril, and that's all. And I'm sure she is. You're right.
She's terrified,
Typhoon scared her, so it
really
worked.
Fits. Yeah. I do think the women in general are better than the men in this in terms of their performances. I guess maybe just because their characters have a little less cringy dialogue to deliver as well.
Yeah.
But I think being scared of Typhoon definitely helps her. She was my second on my list of actors who elevated it. I'll tell you my first in just a sec. But I thought she did a competent job for what she was given.
She's the one who felt like a star in this. It feels like
I
I think Christopher Atkins did at some level. If this movie had been better, the role he played would have been probably remembered a little bit, as that action hero type character. Had the movie been better, that performance probably would have been well received. But I thought that she felt like the star. She felt like a star. She felt like someone who, as I was watching it, I was like, okay, this is the one whose movies I want to see more of.
Yeah,
and that's how.
And that's why her death was so shocking.
Her death was shocking for a lot of reasons, but
Well, I'll tell you my favorite actor that elevated this material, and sadly they are no longer with us, so we can't see any more of their work. But it is Typhoon. Typhoon is incredible in this, and I really think Typhoon just nailed the mannerisms. We really believe that Typhoon was a baboon in this.
Right.
And just the incredible amount of willpower, jumping, doing their own stunts. I mean, that's pretty impressive for any actor that Typhoon was able to do that. And the fact that it was such a great method actor that Amanda Weiss was terrified of Typhoon. I think that's a lot to
never broke character.
Big compliment. No, never broke character. Even in the close-ups, which is pretty amazing. So Typhoon is the actor that elevated the material for me.
I thought
Amanda
it was.
Weiss is the closest second.
I thought it was. I think it's a little shady that he kept sending bananas to her room, but
especially peeled bananas.
Peeled bananas. With a single monkey bite out of them. Yeah, it was.
Oh man, Typhoon coming to you in Morbius too. It's Morbin time, starring Typhoon.
It's Morbin time.
It's Shakma time.
Yeah.
Oh, that's got to be the sequel.
All right, let's. Before we get to Yeah, before we get to train wreck moment and scoring and trash more, let me just talk about the legacy. There's not a lot of legacy.
Nope.
Critical reception was highly negative upon its release, with many panning the weak humor, shoddy effects, and flat direction, which we have all talked about. Eric Snyder, MCV, criticized the film's extended, dull stretches, which, yes, I don't think we talked about that a lot, but how, like, so much of it was just, like, long shots of the hallway and him jumping up a thing and just repeated beat. We talked about repeated beats, but there were so many repeated beats over and over and over again. Yeah, it was definitely long stretches of dull stuff. Weak characters, soundtrack, poorly executed attack sequences. Let's see.
I do have a question about legacy, just for you, Chris. Like, how did you discover this movie? Because like we had never heard of it, and like it was amazing when you brought it up. I was like, where has this been all my life? Like, how did you discover this, or like, do you seek these things out? Like, because this is a real rare diamond in the rough, you know?
I do seek them out to some degree. It was actually a long time ago. I used to do a weekly bad movie night just with my friends, and like I went into this blind. Like we didn't watch a trailer or anything, but what we would do is just like go on whatever streaming app, like just all of them, and just look for what might seem bad. And we came across Shakma, I think at the time on like Amazon Prime or something, and literally just read the description. I think the write-up for it was med students are trapped and terrorized by an enraged baboon. And the cover art looked perfect. So we're like, no talking, we're just gonna watch this. And that's it. Like,
I mean, hey,
had no idea who was in it. None of that. It was just.
Yeah,
I've attended some of those bad movie nights.
You have, so you know how they work. Yeah, like,
yeah.
Like,
there's a lot. They're a lot of fun, and
I wish this was more advertised. Yeah, because like it seems like something you can only really stumble upon, which is why I hope more people watch this episode and want to check it out. It's
definitely. One of the quotes I have here from a review from DVD Talk is, while it might sound delightfully bad, Shakma's tale of murderous monkey knocking off role-playing med students pisses on the line between so bad it's good and downright insulting with willful disobedience. It's not funny, scary, or much of anything more than bewildering and tiresome. I thought it's funny, but not for the right reasons. But yeah, it does toe that line between like it is so bad it's good, but also like it's also like really like there's some really dull like stuff like those repeated beats over and over again. Like the bad stuff is really bad and it's really awesome, but yeah, it does toe a line. I will agree with that. Lots of bad reviews. Regardless, the film has gained a small cult following over the years.
All three of us.
Yeah.
No, I hope there's more. It's on a streaming service. What did I watch on Tubi? Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's on Tubi right now, and I think
it's on Shout Factory.
Yeah, I think they have the rights currently for it. So where
I watched it. I subscribed to Shout Factory for the month just because one, they've got a lot of really great stuff on their streaming.
They got a lot of Mystery Science Theater.
A lot of Mystery Science Theater and stuff. But also because of this is on there, so that's where I watched it. But
nice. Well, hopefully someday it'll be on Criterion and people will be able to get like the video essays and all that stuff too.
Criterion needs to have more bad movies.
I think they did do a Blu-ray release on it.
They did.
I think it has like some commentary.
Okay. So a fun thing, they did a Blu-ray. So it went to theater for a very short amount of time. Then they did a VHS release of it. In like 2007, they did a DVD release, and then in like 2015 or something, they did a Blu-ray release, and then they did the newest version of it is another DVD release. They went backwards for this movie, but it does have all the same stuff that the Blu-ray has. But yeah, they went backwards for this guy. Okay, let's now that brings us to our train wreck moment of the movie. This is the hilariously bad moment in the film that just derailed it. Okay, so I'm going to start here because I thought it was really hard to find a specific.
I was going to say I don't have one because I'm like looking through my notes and I'm like I don't have one, but I'd like to.
Yeah, it's hard to pick like one moment or whatever because there's just a lot and talk about. My train wreck moment of the movie is not actually in the movie. my train wreck moment is what this movie should have been, and I've talked about it a little bit already. I'm actually not the type of person that criticizes a movie for what I think it should have been. Generally, I usually just take a movie for what it is, and it either is or isn't good. Yeah. However, there are moments like this where I'm like, there is so much potential that I feel like I need to discuss how this should have been good. So the movie this should have been, I think the premise is good. There's a role-playing game. There's a live-action role-playing game or a where they're doing the building. I think all of that stays. I think that you get the you define the rules and make it a little bit more interesting for the viewer who's watching it to maybe be a little bit invested in the game, because that's what you're doing for the first little bit is the game. Make them invested in the game. Have the nemesis be someone who goes from room to room rather than sitting, and actually give them a defined role where they are trying to take out the characters before they get to the princess. Have him be the first one to die, and then have Shakma taking them out as they go along. And no one knows that it's not Richard. They think that it's Shakma. Or they don't know that it's Shakma. They think it's Richard taking these people out, but it's actually Shakma. And eventually they stumble upon, oh my God, this is what's happening. That's the first hour of the movie. You don't have to spend that first hour watching him jump at the door like they do. That's the first hour of the movie. Then you've got the point where they're all like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Then you've got a tight 20, 30 minutes of them basically doing what they did, but in a much tighter situation where they're trying to figure out how to get out of this room because now the person with the keys has died. But I thought about all this. Your idea that Sorensen is in on it somehow might work in this situation also. Although if it's just a random thing and no one knows about it, that works. But also maybe Sorensen is like, this is how I get these kids. But I don't know. I think like having Shakma, having him not be in on it, and Shakma just taking them out as he's going along, and then nobody really realizing that's not Nemesis, is the movie that this should have been.
Yeah, Matt, I think our goal for like 10 years from now, if we're still doing this show, I don't know if we will, but like I hope we can like put together a script and like pitch it as like our big passion project of getting Shakma back in theaters with a competent script. Yeah. Maybe even filming it ourselves. Who knows? We'll have to have casting calls for the monkey. I got a few calls to make, but yeah.
Did you have a train wreck moment, Chris?
I did, and this kind of goes back into, like I mentioned, I first watched it for a bad movie night one night with a group, and we had a kind of a stable rule of if a movie doesn't like hit or have a moment where it's just like, oh my God, what's happening, within like 10 or so minutes, we would just scrap it and like move on to something else because they're typically short enough. Right. My train wreck moment is when we first meet Shakma, like after he's gone through like the brain injection that happens and he like freaks out, wakes up out of the anesthesia and goes crazy. Happens like 7 minutes in, like I think I mentioned before. That's when we were in. We were 1,000% sold on this movie. Excellent. And I think that's the reason why I have to have it as my train wreck moment.
I love that. I love that. All right. That's great. And to have like that rule is really good, and to have that as the reason for the train wreck.
Oh yeah, because when you watch a lot of bad movies, sometimes you stumble upon ones that are not so bad that they're entertaining and fun that you can make fun of. Sometimes they're just bad. So having that 10-minute rule of just like, oh, this is bad.
It's a really good rule. I will say that there are a few movies like Last Christmas, Paul Feig's Christmas movie, where it's just a bad movie until you get to the end and realize that it's actually a really good bad movie. But it's not until you get to the very end of it that you realize that it's actually that kind of a bad movie. But normally that rule is good. Okay, now we get to scoring. This is out of 5, and the way that our scores work is how bad it is versus and how much we are entertained by it. So A perfect 5 out of 5 is something that is very bad, and we are entertained solely by how bad it is. A 0 or the low end would be something that's actually good, and we're entertained
like
by how good it is.
The Godfather is a 0, but also like Battleship, which was a movie we watched because it was bad, but it was just bad. It wasn't entertaining. Would be like lower end as well.
Oh yeah, that's true. If it's bad and not entertaining, it's down there, and if it's good and entertaining, it's down there. The middle is going to be things like that are bad and entertaining, but it's not everything that you're entertained by is its badness. Like it's gonna. So that's how our scale works. I'll go ahead and go first real quick. I'm giving this. I thought this was mostly bad, but as I mentioned, there were a few things that I actually was entertained by on its own merit, and also there were some parts that just were not entertaining to me. So I'm giving it 3 spoons pushed through the window slats, hoping to hit the car across the street out of 5.
Nice. Chris, what would you give this as for your score?
I'm kind of going the same route. It's entertaining, but it's just so repetitive at times to where that kind of weighs on you. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give it 3 typhoon hops away out of 5.
Yeah.
Cool. And I'm right along with you guys. I am 3 blinks after strobe lights out of 5, which is a lot more than Shakma had. Yeah. Shakma only had 1.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. That's Shakma.
Yeah,
we have to talk about Mount Trashmore.
We do have to talk about Mount Trashmore. Yeah.
Yeah, Matt, explain.
Okay, Mount Trashmore is the Mount Rushmore of Framewreck. Basically, this is meant to represent the best of the movies that we have watched, and by best we mean worst. And honestly, right now, what do we have on Mount Trashmore right now?
Mount Trashmore, we got like 4 pretty heavy hitters. We have The Room, we have Birdemic, we have Troll 2, and most recently we did put on Plan 9 from Outer Space. So that's our 4. Yeah.
It's going to take a lot for anything to ever get on Mount Trashmore. Well, and this is not it.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chris, do you? I mean, I've assumed you've seen those 4 movies that we talked about Mount Trashmore.
Those are going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, do you think Shakma beats it?
No, not at all.
All right, well, that was our debate because I agree. So Shakma will not be making Mount Trashmore. It'll have to go find some other hill to climb on, mountain to carve its face onto. So.
Yeah. Door to jump on, probably. It's okay. So next month, so this is 2 in a row where we're watching a movie I have never seen. But I believe Dyl has seen this movie.
Huh. I actually don't remember what we talked about, so this is all news to me too. So
you can edit this out, but you were definitely drunk when we were texting about it.
Okay. No, I'm still very fascinated to find out what you're going to say.
We are going to watch. If you've ever seen a Conan interview with Paul Rudd,
yes.
You've seen a clip from this movie. We are going to be doing the classic E.T. ripoff, Mac and Me.
E.T. ripoff? Come on. I'm kidding.
That's a good one.
Or the Mac and Me ripoff, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no. Oh, my gosh.
That is a good one.
Yes. Greatest McDonald's commercial ever made. We will be talking about that next month. I actually forgot. Yes, we did talk about that, Matt, and I'm very excited now. Wow, what a great thing. Yeah, this was a movie in my childhood. Don't ask me why. Ask my mom. I have no idea. It was on our VHS shelf, so Mom, that's your fault. I'm just kidding. Love you. But yeah, I'm very excited to talk about Mac and Me because, again, this is, I think, maybe the first time that I've seen something that Matt hasn't. Mm-hmm. So that'll also be interesting because I can kind of share my personal experience and kind of say lead the discussion hearing what Matt thinks for his first time watch. But very exciting. Chris, as always, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, you are the expert when it comes to bad horror movies specifically. So yeah, any final thoughts on Shakma before we call it a day? And where else can they find you?
You can find me pretty much on Twitter. I don't really tweet that much, but it's at Cellar Door Floor. Thank you for having me. It was a good time as always.
And Matt, of course, you're always here every month here on Framewreck, but you're also other places. So is Chris. He's on draft day sometimes. So check them out everywhere else. Matt, where else can they find you?
Yes, Chris, thank you for coming. We'll definitely have you back on again. I mean, you're so much fun to talk to, especially about bad horror movies. So, but yeah, so you can find me on the internet at Mattman, MattmanXIII, wherever Mattmans are sold. That's where you can find me.
Nice. And you can find me here on the channel. I'll put little socials right there. Dylan_Randazzo, Dyl Pickle Movie Network, and then there's Matt's socials as well. Next month, we're doing Mac and Me. Check that out. And also check out the most recent Draft Day. Both these guys are on it. Slashers, we talked about some really fun movie moments, some niche ones too. Chris always brought some great perspective to that show as well, and I'm excited to check out. Maybe someday we'll have you back on, Chris, to talk about that Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie you talked about, because that sounds delightful.
I would love to. It's so bad, but it is very entertaining.
Amazing. So everyone check that out. Thanks for watching, and go check out Shakma.
What a story, Mark.